Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for coming today. Excuse me, I'm sort of losing my voice, so I hope all of the panelists will talk more so I can save my voice here. The panel today is a big picture for global media, and there's no question that we're in the midst of a dramatic shift in media and entertainment. We have mobile, social, digital distribution, new financing models, the growing importance of international revenue, new listening models in music. Everything is in the midst of change, and to quote Sumner Redstone, content is still king. So the big question for our panelists today is how all of these changes are impacting their businesses and where the opportunities and challenges lie. And we have a really, really phenomenal panel, Gale and Hurd from Valhalla, CEO of Valhalla and Walking Dead, most notably. Michael Lynton, Sony Entertainment, Sony Corporation of America. Les Moonves, CEO of CBS. Bob Pittman, who has been CEO of so many companies, I'm not going to even name them, CEO of Clear Channel. And I'm going to start this off by asking all of the panelists to just give a quick thought on what the biggest challenge is that they're facing right now in light of all of the changes in the digital landscape. And Bob, why don't we start with you?
Well, the biggest challenge we face is getting the advertisers up to speed on what's happening with the consumer. And I'm an old-fashioned guy and think advertising eventually follows the consumer. But we're in one of those periods where it's had rapid change. People do jump to the shiny new thing. And coming out of radio and outdoor, we're the forgotten child out there, and probably the two sectors that underperform versus their usage patterns. So if you say what wakes me up in the night is how do I get to all those people and have the sit-down conversation, do the stuff that our industry probably should have been doing the last 15 years, wasn't. And as a result, when new things come along, you feel their impact more than you should.
Les?
Obviously, every single one of our businesses has changed rapidly over the last just a couple of years. And I think the biggest challenge for us is obviously content is our most important product, and we're selling our content in so many different ways than we were before. At the same time, you have to be careful. You can't hurt your core businesses. We're still primarily a network television operation. By the same token, we are making hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, obviously, for putting our content on digital sites and digital streams, including our own sites. And the idea is to spread out your content as much as you can and yet not give up the mother lode, not give up the family jewels, which is what our content is.
I think right now the biggest challenge we're having is on the creative side, because the consumer is becoming, or our audiences are becoming much more sophisticated and are communicating much more rapidly about whether they like things or they don't, and this is both on the film and the television side. There's a desire for freshness and new and quality in a way there never was in the past, and that sort of works against the idea that you try and do things that have worked in the past, and if you continue to do that, then the consumer, the audience today tends to reject it, so you constantly have to try and push the creative envelope, which is always a little bit uncomfortable.
I'd say there's a lot of noise out there. As Michael was saying, the feedback is immediate, and you can't always listen to the people who may be the loudest. As a creator of content, if you just listen to the loudest voices, that may not actually be what your typical viewer wants. So we have to curate, actually, what we listen to and respond to.
But in terms of social, what is the power of social media? I know there's been a lot of talk about the role of social media in television, but what is the role of social media for you, both in film and then with The Walking Dead?
Well, for me, what's really impressive is that we became a social media phenomenon. And what helps the network, which is AMC, is that because we are all over Twitter and Facebook, people tend to actually watch the show when it airs. They don't DVR it, they don't download it later, because then they'd have to stay away from social media, and everyone's addicted to it. So it's actually worked in our favor.
Is social media the savior for live television?
Oh, I don't think it's the savior. I think live television's doing it pretty well by itself with, social media certainly is an advantage. It's certainly, when you look at something like the Grammy Awards or the Super Bowl, the percentage of people who are talking to other people while they're watching it, makes it a much more communal experience. And there are definite positives about it. Obviously, your most popular shows have a lot of fans. They like talking about their shows. But, once again, network television isn't dead.
No, but it seems like people are more likely now to tune in if they know that everyone's going to be tweeting about a show the night that it airs.
There's no question. And the live events, and Gale was referencing that, the live events aren't DVR'd. People don't want to watch the Super Bowl 2 days later. They don't want to watch the Grammy Awards, And there are certain shows like Walking Dead, they want to watch it then because there's a lot of water cooler activity through social media, and it's important to see what's happening.
How do you leverage social with music?
Well, I think you use it in a lot of ways, but I just want to hit one point on social media. The only good news about being my age is I have pattern recognition. And word of mouth has always been the best advertising. And you try and for every show, movie, radio station, disc jockey event, you want the word of mouth going. What social media has done has just enabled normal human behavior, is that we do want to tell everybody. We want to ramble on about everything that's happened in our life. We want someone to listen to us. And between Facebook, Twitter, and 2 or 3 others, you've got suddenly a mechanism to take it to proportions that have a huge impact on anything you do. We did the iHeartRadio Music Festival. We've done it 2 years now, last year in Vegas. We had a billion social impressions. It was trending 2 nights in a row. And you go, that sort of makes the legend of an event. It wasn't quite that big the first year. Second year, it hits that level. I suspect third year, you have just the word of mouth and that kind of social activity propelling it through. And if we sold out the concert this year in less than 10 minutes, I suspect we'll do it in less than 5 for the next one. And I think that's the power of what you've got going, is you just got this incredible concentration. Now, the bad news is, when it's bad news, it travels a lot faster and it's a lot more brutal. And people sort of forget the downside of that. When I ran Six Flags theme parks, we used to say if we let somebody get out of the park who had a bad experience, they would tell 100 people about the bad experience. So we had all these mechanisms to try and get their problem solved before they walked out the gate. I suspect today with social, that's not 100 people. God knows how many people that is. And I think that's one of the issues we have to watch out for.
What does that do in terms of opening movies? How will social impact your tentpole releases this summer?
I think it's very similar to what Bob and Leslie were describing, which is when it's good, people say it in a hurry, and when it's bad, people say it in a hurry. And that's and that's made our life a lot more difficult because typically, there's only a percentage of what we make in the film side of things, for sure, that is really good, and the rest you really relied on marketing to get through, and. And
you can't buy a big opening weekend anymore.
The packaging now is sort of unwrapped very quickly, and the audience looks inside the packaging and they give you a verdict overnight.
Social media is another form of marketing in many, many ways. And you could market all you want. And we tell the producers of our television show, look, we can get them to the show. We can get you to the gate. Then it's the product that takes over. And if your product is garbage, it doesn't matter who's talking about it, or, to your point and your point, it is social media will kill it, and it'll go away really quickly. The easiest thing to do is to blame marketing for a lack of good product. Marketing can do so much, and it's up to the producer.
I have to ask about Aereo.
Sure.
I have to get it out of the way. Digital distribution, there's the kind of digital distribution that generates revenue, and then there's Aereo.
Okay,
What do you think?
Aereo won one case in New York. We won another case in California. They're now going to try to open up in Boston. We're going to go after them legally there. It's illegal. They're taking our signal. They're charging people for it. They're not giving us any money. We will go through the courts. If that doesn't work, there are other remedies for it. By the way, they've been in business for 1.5 years, and they have all of 2,000 subs. I think the fact that it's on the front page of the trade papers every other day, to me, is silly. It's nothing we lose sleep over. If, as some say, oh, gee, it could work and take over, then we'll do it ourselves. So there are other remedies. Aereo is not a problem. It's gotten way blown out of proportion. So, Barry Diller's done what he likes to do, which is disrupt things. And he's succeeded because everybody's writing about it. It is nothing that concerns us.
So you say there are other remedies. Does that mean turning CBS into a cable
Sure.
channel?
By the way, we've already spoken to the cable networks in New York, in the New York area. We can do it in a few days and put it right there. That will happen. We think there are legal remedies. If not, there will be financial remedies or even congressional remedies. Because if we go to cable, which we will do if we're forced to, then there'll be 10 to 15% of America who won't get our stations. And that's not very good when they want to watch the NFL or they want to watch NCIS.
So cable may be in CBS's future.
It might be. I doubt it will come to that. I think we're going to win legally. If not, once again, I don't think they're going to hurt us with 2,000 subs in New York City.
So you recently made an investment in a company that would allow you to create an alternative. What does the future look like for CBS down the line? Even if Aereo doesn't win, will you be offering an alternative like Aereo?
We might. Obviously, streaming is going to be an important part of our business. We have a dual revenue stream right now. We get paid for advertising, and then we get paid sub fees. So yes, we've invested in a company called SyncBack, which online will give you local television stations, which will include advertising, and it will include some subscription fees. So push comes to shove, that could be an alternative for Aereo, but as it is, it will be something for the future. And that's what we're doing. That's what all of us here are doing. We're putting our content out in a lot of different ways. We just want to get paid fairly, and we don't think it's appropriate that something like Aereo should make money off of our content without us getting some of that money.
So to look more broadly at digital distribution, every quarter, and I know your earnings are tomorrow, every quarter you talk about the growth in digital revenue.
Correct.
Where is the biggest opportunity right now?
Obviously, we have very strong deals with Netflix and Amazon, and they are continuing to grow. And then there are new people who are talking about coming into the marketplace. We've heard about Intel coming in. We've heard about Sony coming into the marketplace. And we've obviously talked to all these people. And you said it earlier, as long as you have the content that people want to watch, you will get paid for it in a lot of different ways. And that's why the future for us is very bright.
Speaking of disruptors, Netflix has obviously had quite an impact. And we've talked a little bit about sort of Netflix as a buyer. Mm-hmm. You recently made a deal with Starz, even though Netflix was interested. Mm-hmm. Does Netflix raise prices for your content? Does it allow you to charge more?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Netflix or any of the new digital platforms that Les just described is that they have introduced a new competitive force in not just the U.S. marketplace, but marketplaces around the world. And in some of those marketplaces, particularly in Europe, we were stuck with a situation, the UK being a prime example, where there really was only one pay operator. And so you were coming as a studio, and you either dealt with Sky or there was no one else to deal with. And the same was the case in France, to an extent in Germany. And to the end here in the United States, there was limited competition. All of a sudden now, with Netflix and Amazon and others coming into the marketplace, you have a real bidding situation going on. And of course, prices have gone up for content considerably as a result. And as Les suggests, it's been very, very good to be in the content business the last few years.
Now, Gale, you haven't done any shows for Netflix, but how's Netflix as a force impacting your business?
When you look at the quality of the shows that they're doing, and you look at the budgets, I mean, I can assure you that House of Cards costs more than The Walking Dead. I'm not quite sure how that's sustainable, but I think it made a splash, and that's what I think Netflix wanted to do. That you go big, everyone now knows that they are offering original content, and and their subscribers went up. I think the statistic was that they now have more subscribers than HBO. So I think that's how Netflix sees themselves, as not only a creator of content, but it's a great subscription service. I think the interesting thing is going to be what happens when teenagers, people in college, are used to that being the way that they consume content, and what that means for the rest of us.
You mean cord cutting? Or cord nevers?
Cord nevers.
Cord nevers.
I should say one thing. One thing I would say that Netflix has done, along with DVRs, is there was always the promise that technology would in some way change the creative process in Hollywood. And I think for television drama in particular, Netflix and DVRs have changed it. And there's a reason for why there's a renaissance now in television that everybody's noted, which is that because in the past, if you had a show like The Wire, which are these open-ended episodes, and people felt, oh, I missed episode 4, therefore I'm going to forget about the whole season, they never got a real audience. All of a sudden now, because of the ability to either splurge and see the whole thing all at once or catch up, these shows have very significant audiences. Writers, when they look at the ability to write character arcs that go over 13 hours as opposed to just 2 hours in a movie, say, wow, that's really appealing. So all of a sudden you have great writers coming, even better or as good as have been there in the past, but even more great writers coming in. Great writers attract great directors attract great actors, and all of a sudden now you have these fantastic shows coming onto television these last 5 or 6 years, and I would argue it's the direct result of a new technology. And that I certainly haven't seen that happen before.
Well, I think also you've got this phenomenon of the binge viewing. And I've got a 12 and 14-year-old that are my guinea pigs. And they find a show that's almost like the theatrical window set the value of a movie, and you pick it up in all the other forms. And now the network sort of sets the value, and they will watch a show. They will go through every episode. Then they move on to another one and binge that show. Then they move on to another one and binge it. Some of them, if we're on a holiday weekend, it's like the sun shining, go outside. But they're absolutely caught on one episode to the other episode to the other. And frankly, when that all came up, and Michael and I were back at the AOL days, I couldn't imagine that people were going to be watching that on the computer screen like that, but they are. And it surprised me how prevalent that is, especially with that age group that's grown up with it.
Les, do you see an impact from Netflix? Are you worried about cord nevers?
Netflix is a friend and an enemy at the same time. Yes, they are buying a lot of our content. They give us a lot of money for that content. We have an excellent relationship with them. But by the same token, and to Gale's point, House of Cards is terrific. Now, they spent $5 million an episode. That's a lot more than Walking Dead costs. It's a lot more than any show on CBS costs. And it's doing extraordinarily well. It's a wonderful show. So are they going after the same subscriber that's paying us for Showtime? Absolutely. So on one hand, they're paying us, and on the other hand, they're competing with us. And I think technology has made a lot of frenemies. A lot of people you do business with, but a lot of people who want to kill you at the same time. So it's you have to navigate that.
You didn't answer my question, though, about the cord nevers.
What? Now, what's the question?
Are you concerned about this phenomenon of cord nevers impacting retrans revenue down the line?
No. You know what? As long as we continue to do what we are doing in terms of providing A-plus content, you're still going to need to watch the NFL somewhere. You can't watch the NFL unless you get CBS and Fox and NBC. You can't do that. You can watch some programming. You can have different packaging going on. But once again, live events, sports, and in-demand shows will make that not a threat to us.
Speaking of frenemies, Apple. What about Apple TV? Is there still talk about Apple TV, or have people forgotten about that? Do people care about Apple TV?
They keep saying that they're going to debut, and they haven't yet. We'll see. I mean, you can't ever count Apple out, but it's been a long time coming.
We don't know what Apple TV is yet, and one of the problems with Apple so far is that they haven't embraced Nielsen. So it's hard to put your content there unless it's counted. You need your content counted. That's one of the futuristic things that we need to have happen, is every eyeball needs to be counted, and we need to get paid for it, because without that, we're nothing.
Now, Bob, there's a lot of talk about Apple moving into the iHeartRadio space with a streaming option. What do you think about Apple in that space? Are you threatened? Can Apple threaten the radio business?
Well, it's interesting. One, I don't think they're doing radio. If you really look at what people are calling internet radio, they're really two things. One is radio, and one is your music collection. And back in the day, it's been the same thing since I was a kid with an AM radio and 45 RPM records. Is your music collection is when you want to escape the world. You put on your music collection, you don't want any interruptions, commercials. You don't want disc jockeys. You want to be shut out. When you're ready to engage the world, you turn on the radio. What's going on? and you hear disc jockeys talking, to give you a lot of information. I mean, out here on KISS FM, we have Ryan Seacrest. New York, we have Elvis Duran. They don't play many records. We find that the talking is more popular, even though it's a music radio station, than the music at that time. But they're looking to find out what's going on in the world. These people are pop curators. They're giving them the latest gossip. They're telling them everything they need to know to go to work or go to school or come home and tell somebody something that makes them relevant and a part of their tribe. So what they're calling iRadio, and by the way, on iHeartRadio, we have Real Radio, which are radio stations rebroadcast, and some digital stations, and we have Custom Radio, but make no mistake about it, it's a playlist creator. Everything that can save you time works better. And what Pandora does, we do with iHeartRadio, and I presume probably iRadio will do, is you put a song or a group in, and it spits out a playlist that's about what you like. And if you've ever done a playlist, it takes forever. I did about 2, and after that I started saying, hey, do you have a playlist? I like your music. Would you give me your playlist? Because I'm lazy. And this one solves that problem. What I think is happening with the custom radio feature, to sort of take that as a separate issue, is I think you're finding everybody's adding it to something else. Apple trying to add it to their download service. Spotify has one they've added to their subscription service. You've got one at CBS with Last FM, which is added to radio stations. We've got the same with iHeartRadio. And even Xbox has a smart DJ, I think they call it, which is a custom solution. And the question is with Pandora, which I think has done a fabulous job, is it a business or a feature? Freestanding. And in our days, again, go back to AOL, we had the instant messenger service. Everybody used it. It was wildly popular. It was not a freestanding business. In itself, it would not make money. Never could. No one ever figured out how to make it a freestanding business. So I think you may see the custom radio feature as sort of almost a table stakes feature that gets added to a lot of other things. In our case, radio. In Apple's case, more music collection, et cetera.
So you think basically that technology has been commoditized, and it's all about the distinguishing?
Yeah, and I'm not sure it's commoditized. I think in the sense that, each one has everyone will have a preference, but I think your preference will be driven by what else you're using. If you use iTunes a lot, you'll probably go to their iRadio. If you use our radio stations a lot, you'll probably use iHeartRadio, custom radio feature in addition to the stations, et cetera. And I think, it then brings into question, what is the only sort of freestanding one out there, which is Pandora do? Do they ally with someone else? Do they become a feature added to other people's services, or do they continue to go it alone?
Now, you listed a number of competitors, but what distinguishes your service seems to be, from a financial perspective, the way you've made deals directly, revenue-sharing deals directly with artists.
Well, that's part of it. I think what distinguishes us is we use the promotional power of our radio stations, which, by the way, our radio stations alone reach over 200 million people a month, making it probably the largest reach vehicle in the U.S. We pound the hell out of that, advertising it. So we have this, our competitive advantage is we're able to tell our tribes, which are the listeners to all these different formats and stations we have, about this service and make it relevant to them. And of course, what you're finding is if somebody decides they want to listen to Z100 or KISS FM, if they listen to it here, they don't know it's not an FM chip. It's still Z100. It's these franchises they like, so it's another listening opportunity. And I think that doesn't change. When you look at the music rights, when we said, there's a music collection and there's radio, unfortunately, the way the music rights are structured today, that's all one rights structure, as if it's the same thing. And it's not. I mean, if somebody's retailing your music, that's probably one set of economics. If people are coming to the station for a lot of reasons other than just the music, and everybody else has the same music, that's probably another set of economics. So what we've done is tried to look to build sustainable markets. Because if you look at the music business, downloads are up, subscription services are up, custom radio's up. The only thing that's down is simulcast of terrestrial radio stations. Why? Because the economics don't work and the structure's not right. I don't think the record companies or the artists should get paid any less money, but we're looking for alternative ways to do it, which really scale with the business.
And how important are these direct relationships with artists?
I think it's important to everybody. I think it's important to the artist. I think it's important to the record companies. It's important to the people providing it. Remember, this is the first time in the history of the music business where you've gone through a transition and the rights users did not own the rights. In the past, it was CBS Records, CBS Radio, was It was RCA Records was NBC, MTV was Warner Music, ABC Records, etc. So it's sort of migrated seamlessly because they all figured out how the two got in harmony. And if I were sitting at a record company, I would be paranoid too, saying, wait a minute, I don't control that reach to the consumer, and I'm worried how something could go wrong because once I've signed the contract, I can't go back and just adjust it, which you can if you're the owner. So I think the negotiations and the planning are a much more laborious process than you would normally find. But there's certainly reasons why, and I'm convinced at the end it all works out.
Now, Michael, we recently talked about how Sony Music has, as you called it, bottomed. And you think the future is bright for Sony Music, and is it because of the likes of iHeartRadio and Spotify?
Yeah, I think right now there are so many different ways. First of all, as been noted a lot, there's more music being listened to than ever before, and for a lot of good reasons. There's just a lot more ways to listen to it, not just in terms of digital platforms, but devices. And I think there are all sorts of business models, many of which Bob just described, and lots of others that are contributing to the bottom line of the various music companies. And so, as you put it, bottom out, I think there's a point at which the music industry shrunk its overhead to the place where they got their cost structure right, which, like all of our businesses at a certain point gets bloated, and they got their cost structure right, and now they're seeing lots and lots of different sources of revenues. I think the relationship between the artists and the music companies now has also is a healthy relationship from a financial perspective. The price being paid for records or music rather is right. The advances are right. So I think it is a very good time for music.
Now, you, in your first comments, spoke a little bit about sort of the advertiser question and sort of convincing advertisers. What are the trends you're seeing in terms of advertising right now? I mean, obviously, the upfronts are next week. This is the week of the digital new fronts. What are you seeing in terms of advertisers and their approach to iHeartRadio?
Well, as we look at it, I think it is, digital is pretty hot, and the places where we touch digital are important. I think people think about traditional media and sort of forget that that's really where the scale and numbers are. Going to Les's point about network television, I mean, you still have the tremendous mass market, heavy reach of network TV. You want that, you better be there. And so I think it's coming along, but I think one of the problems is that we keep thinking about advertising as a cost when we describe it and discuss it, but the reality is it's an investment. It's probably the most important investment a company makes, and it's really about ROI. And I think as an industry, we've all had to really take a step back and say, we've been traders for a long time with a commodity trader on the other side, and our CPMs are the cost of price per ton, and our ratings are the quality of the ore or whatever. And we really had to say, wait a minute, we got to put ourselves in the marketer's shoes and talk about if you invest $1, how many dollars will you get back? And again, I go back to when I ran Six Flags theme parks, when I had the park presidents, I said, look, in our budgets, your advertising is not a cost, it's an investment. And if you ask for an amount of money, you got to tell me you're going to give me a return. If you want another $1 million, how much will you give me back? And I'm going to let you guys all compete out there, and let's see who can do it. And look, that model helped us a lot, and we spent heavily on media. I think you're finding the smart marketers on both the media side and the advertiser side beginning to really focus on that junction of what's the ROI and how can I improve my ROI.
Les, you have your digital new front tonight, and then you have your upfront next week, right?
Absolutely. It's sort of ironic. People have been talking about the upfronts for many years and saying, gee, it's such an antiquated system that the networks all put out their product for 1 week, and you go on stage and you do your song and dance, and you ask the advertisers to give you 75 to 80% of their budgets for the year. And now the interactive guys are copying the network guys. So maybe we're not so old after all. The irony is exactly the new fronts, basically represent the fact that there's so much more cross-platform selling going on. As I said, the bulk of it is still the network. That's still our number one bucket. But there's now a lot more cross-selling and cross-platforming. And to Bob's point, which is absolutely right, advertising no longer should be thought of in any other way than a marketing tool. In other words, they look to us when they come in and make their buy, whether it's radio, whether it's interactive, whether it's the networks, whether it's syndication, they want marketing ideas. We have, in essence, aided the advertising agency and the creative directors at the company in terms of our sales guys having to give them an idea, whether it's incorporated into our show or our interactive spaces, but we have to be more marketers than sellers.
And what are your expectations? Will we see an increase?
I can't talk about that. We have our earnings tomorrow. Of course we're going to see an increase. CPMs are going to be up. Volume is going to be up. Business is very healthy. The scatter market is very healthy. Interactive sales are going to be very strong, across the board. This is the first year the new fronts have really been as intensive as they have, and we'll see what happens there. But we're looking forward to 2 weeks from tomorrow in Carnegie Hall when we present our wares to the advertiser, and we think we're going to do very well.
But at the same time, you have the rise of cable and immense viewership of shows like Walking Dead, which now, on occasion, exceed broadcast TV for the night. So how do you reconcile
On
this?
occasion, they do, and there are only a handful of shows that do that. Walking Dead is one of them. As we like to say as the anti-cable, no offense, Gale, because Walking Dead is great. It does phenomenally well. Okay, so you got Turner, right? You got TBS and TNT and True and all this big thing. You know what their #1 show on their network is? Big Bang Repeats. USA, right? A lot of original programming, really exciting stuff. #1 show, NCIS Repeats. #2 show, NCIS LA Repeats. So the power of network television is still far more effective than our cable brethren. It's not to say we don't love cable. We have cable, we have Showtime, we have
You just invested in
the TV Guide channel. Absolutely.
Okay, so Gale, what do you think about this? Over 12 million viewers for Walking Dead.
Well, I think the bigger statistic actually is the talk show about The Walking Dead. The Talking Dead was #8 on the night and got over 5 million viewers. That to me is remarkable. But cable has a different model, and it's much easier because they show so much of Les's shows, so many of the Sony-produced shows. They actually have much more flexibility. They have very little original programming. So we, like the Walking Dead, we air on Sunday nights. Starting on Friday, we repeat the last episode because we're serialized content. And we get to show that same episode 3 times that night. Now, that's not counted in the figure, but it provides many more opportunities. And it also, of course, attracts viewers to the network. And that's helped AMC tremendously. And I think that is the advantage for cable now, and everyone is adopting that model. But at the same time, they aren't having to program 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a much different animal.
And so what is your prediction in terms of viewer patterns? Are we going to see more viewers and more ad dollars shift into cable?
Content is king. If you make a great show, regardless of where it resides, and of course the network, whether it's cable, broadcast, or even Netflix or any other operator, people will find it and they will watch it. And if you don't, as the expression goes, jump the shark, and do something that is completely outside of the universe of your show, the viewers will continue to watch. But really, the remarkable thing is that the binge viewing and the ability in a serialized show for people to catch up, to watch it again. AMC reruns our show all the time and does marathons prior to our relaunch. They even show the episodes in black and white, because the comic book we're based on is in black and white. So it's another way to capture people's interest and to give an audience an opportunity to see the show again.
We're talking about binge viewing, catch-up viewing. Where does Hulu fit into all of this? You give some of your content to
You're asking us. We were the one network that didn't join Hulu.
What happens to Hulu now?
You know what? I think Hulu, ultimately, they're obviously for sale. We've all heard of different offers being made. I think Hulu eventually turns into Hulu Plus. I think it eventually competes with Netflix alone. The free Hulu, I think all the networks will take back most of their own content, like we do. It'll be abc.com and nbc.com, et cetera. and they will grow substantially, and I think there will be more of a service, like a Netflix or an Amazon, where it's a sub fee paid for this content.
Bob, what do you think? You've been at so many different disruptive companies over the years. Where does Hulu
Look,
fit in?
I think Les is right. I think you're seeing the model is going to, as the content creator, you can't get the value out of it being free there. And I think you're going to take some stuff free, but I think the networks will hold that. But I think the Netflix model is probably the model that's working, that's got legs, that you can see it's there. And that's sort of the way the consumer wants to do it. And you know what you're finding is that, again, you've seen evidence out here again that consumers, it's not about price really, it's about what's the best offering. And you've got your critical mass in certain places, and that's where the consumer goes. And as long as it's priced fairly, and they're getting value for their money, I think that's not at all a hurdle, and it's a way for the content creators, whether it's Michael or Les or whoever, to get paid in the way that they need to get paid and to continue their business.
So who should buy Hulu? Michael, you want to buy Hulu?
No. We're not a buyer for Hulu.
Who should buy Hulu?
You should buy Hulu.
Comcast already owns a piece of it. They don't even get a say anymore. So shifting.
But they all want out.
That's right.
So who wants to buy it then?
Well, we'll see.
Right.
Shifting gears to international, since we're not going to get any answers on that question. Growing importance of international, especially for the movie business. How do you address that? I mean, we just saw a huge opening for Iron Man 3.
Right.
You have a bunch of big tentpoles this summer, which I'm sure will do big international numbers. How do you address this international market when you're developing product, when you're thinking about marketing? How does it shift your model?
So on the big movies, the tentpole pictures, and even at some of the smaller movies, obviously international has become the not the tail but the dog. And we here in the United States are just a territory, and upwards of 2/3 of our business is done on a picture outside the United States, with a Spider-Man or a James Bond or Smurfs or something like that. And you address it in a number of different ways. You address it in terms of, and you've seen a lot of commentary about that. Sometimes you populate the movie with international stars. Sometimes you downplay some of the overly American aspects of the movie, which has a whole other set of issues connected to it. The staging of how the movies are being rolled out is very different from what's happened in the past. You're seeing movies now, it's happened with Iron Man, it happens with others, open first outside the United States and then open here in the United States, which would have been unheard of 4 years ago, which shows the growing importance of it. So it's a fact, and it's really the direct result of the rest of the world following the pattern that happened here, which is getting rid of single screens and moving to multi-screen multiplexes, which is pretty much everywhere in Europe now, the bigger markets in Latin America, Russia, China, places like that.
Gale, how focused are you on outside the U.S.?
Well, The Walking Dead may not have actually been ordered the first season because we didn't do a pilot. We got an order of 6 because Fox International channels stepped up and they decided they wanted to do a global launch. And, that was a big roll of the dice on everyone's part. And we started airing in 122 countries within 1 week of the launch here in the U.S. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. When you have a show that is so popular, especially in social media, viewers outside the United States want to get that content right away. And if they don't get it right away, they will pirate it. So I think we're going to see more and more of that.
Any focus on international?
No, Gale said it absolutely right. The international marketplace is exceedingly strong. As much as certain countries have tried to do quotas, American product still is selling remarkably well in all the major territories. And I think all of us in the television business certainly have booming businesses that are growing, not only in terms of pricing, but also the number of territories. Where now you're selling to Latin America, which had been not a very good market before. You're selling into Eastern Europe, you're selling into the Far East, and things are changing. So once again, content wins out.
And Bob, what's your biggest growth market right now?
United States. Plenty of growth here in the United States on everything. Still a great market unless you are absolutely, a fully penetrated business. The radio business, clearly, when we reach almost everybody in the United States with radio, but it's been a substandard performance in terms of advertising. It's got a lot of upside there. Outdoor, for our outdoor business, the United States continues to be great because we're rolling out digital billboards, which really alter the economics of that business. And then, of course, you look at countries like China, obviously, or China, Turkey, Brazil, Mexico, not Spain, not Italy, places we're also in, unfortunately.
And how much of that growth is driven by the explosion of mobile devices, of smart devices?
Well, ours, when I'm talking international, it's all of our outdoor business. And what's curious is you sort of think about the mobile devices for this. We now have billboards. You bring your mobile phone to it, and you take information off of it. And you're using this mobile phone as a controller, a smartphone as a controller for a lot of other things. So it's changing even what this big display is. And Suzanne Grimes, who runs our U.S. business and outdoors, said, wow, you know what that billboard is? Really a big display ad, internet display ad. And it really does look that way, and it can be controlled. And I think that's, if you look around the world, some countries in the world are way ahead of us in terms of the importance of technology and what that's doing in terms of opportunities for marketers.
I mean, the number of mobile devices, I guess we don't have any stats on that, but the number of mobile devices, penetration in the U.S. and also growth internationally is really amazing in terms of the amount of content people can now consume even without access to a computer.
Well, what's interesting is that we, again, in the AOL days, we were all, and actually before that with Cube and interactive TV, we were all projecting the wired home, and that everyone would work from home, they do everything from home, no one would leave the home. Funny thing happened. Turned out instead of a connected home, it's a connected individual. And the individual now is spending more time out of home. People are spending 30% more time in the car than they were 10 years ago. 80% of Americans spend the majority of their day outside the home. The mobile devices enabled behavior, it turns out, consumers wanted to do. And I never thought people would be able to watch a TV show on a little phone, but damn it, they're doing it.
People are doing it, and you have a whole bunch of apps, a whole bunch of CBS apps. What are you seeing in mobile trends?
It's great to watch a TV show on a mobile phone if you're at a grocery store, but it's still the best available screen. You're not going to watch the Super Bowl on a mobile phone when you got a 60-inch television set in front of you. Obviously, our apps are all over the place, and we're trying to expand as best possible. And, once again, we're in so many different businesses that are aided by mobile, be it sports, be it news, be it entertainment, obviously, that, the sky's the limit. I think what you're hearing from this whole panel is we're all producing content of one kind or another, and our challenges are how to spread it out and how to get paid for it in as many ways as possible and offer it to the consumer in as many ways as possible. And I think we're all doing it successfully. I think where the world has finally realized the media companies are pretty smart in keeping ahead of the game, that we're not sitting back and waiting for the world to change. Every single one of our businesses, from billboard to radio to motion pictures to television and music, is now being digitized. It's being transmitted in a totally different way.
But you're not worried about piracy, you've said.
For television, as Gale said, it's really important to get your shows, and that happens right now. An episode of CSI is shown almost simultaneous to when it's shown in the United States. It's only a few weeks later. So I think the movie people would have a better idea about piracy, but it hasn't affected us greatly.
But you made the decision not to participate in the free Hulu.
Correct.
And for years you were the outlier there, and you said it's just not worth it to give away our shows. How is that?
Well, we have our shows on CBS.com. Okay, at Hulu, number one, it's a 70-30 split. So the content provider only gets 70% of the advertising revenue. And number two, I didn't think it was a good idea to be in business with my competitors. My content are the family jewels. I don't want to share that with NBC and ABC. I know they'd like some of my content, but I don't want to share it with them.
And you said with mobile devices,
right.
You said with mobile devices, people aren't going to be watching the Super Bowl on their small, iPhone if they have it on their big screen. But increasingly, they are looking at their iPhone for more information and trying to interact with it or interact with the TV show they're watching while it's the two-screen experience. And how important is that for advertisers.
That's becoming more and more important. But once again, there are only certain things that it's currently used for. It will grow in the future. And once again, the idea is if you can sell a TV show in the second screen along with it. We had the Grammy Awards. It was phenomenally successful and also had 13 million people using a second screen. We were selling ads in both places, and it's very exciting.
Keep in mind, the second screen is not a new phenomenon. It's just gotten a lot better for the TV. It used to be a magazine. The second screen used to be on the phone. I'm calling my friend, oh, do you see what's on TV? Today, I'm here. And now the TV networks or whoever's the provider on the TV screen can now capture that consumer on the second screen. Before it was the magazine. Sorry, we printed that magazine a month ago. No chance to tie it in. So it's the behavior's normal behavior. People treat it, you read about it, and they pretend like this is something absolutely new, that, my God, people are sitting through the commercials. They're not watching the commercials any less than they watched them before. It's exactly the same. It's just everything's going electronic. It can go electronic. When you talk some about these the piracy issue, the worry of piracy, Les was at, I don't know if we made the Lorimar acquisition by then, but at Warner Communications, when the CD player came out, there was a meeting at Warner. I'm sure this went on at other record companies too. And the lawyers showed this CD player, how it played, and they said, we have to stop the CD from coming to America because it's a master quality recording and it will be terrible piracy. So they were getting ready to not bring the CD here out of their fear of 5% piracy, 3% piracy, whatever it is that you're probably never going to get rid of anyway. By the way, in physical stores, people used to steal stuff. Remember the wrapping on all these CDs? I mean, why'd they do that? Because people were stealing them. Nothing has changed there. And fortunately, some business people said, wait a minute, this thing is so popular, let's don't let the piracy fear drive our decision. Let's worry about the consumer and what the opportunity is. And again, I think, the record companies have recovered from it, but initially their desire when Napster came out and all was, let's put them out of business. We'll stop the consumer from getting what they want the way they want it, and as opposed to embracing it the way they did with CD. So I think it's always dangerous when people bring this piracy issue and make it too big, because what it really is, let's look at the stuff Les is doing with CBS, it is an opportunity more than it is a piracy risk.
Yeah, and people.
Well, there's another part to that CD story, which is the reason why CDs are unencrypted and DVDs are encrypted is because when CDs came out, there were only CD players. There were no PCs. So they didn't think to encrypt the CD. Then all of a sudden, the PC shows up, and you realize, oh, you can rip a CD because it's unencrypted. And by the time the movie industry and the television business got around to selling DVDs, they realized, oh, we better encrypt this thing because there are PCs that can rip it, and we better make it illegal to rip it. And the only way that you can do that is by encrypting it. The only reason I tell that story is because it's in this whole piracy thing, it's so difficult to stand out and look out on the landscape and try and imagine where the technology is going. And no matter how we try and guard our wares, there is always something out there that's going to get a hold of them. It's pretty clear to me that there's a certain level of, as the retail business calls it, shrinkage that should be permissible. Maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 6%, there's always a number. Right now, we're probably at too high a number. We clearly need some government help in all of this matter, and we're seeking help from the US government and governments around the world. But for us to sort of try and understand where technology is going to go and say we are going to in some way protect our content or prevent this technology from getting to the consumer, I think the whole CD, DVD thing is a classic example of how we really didn't understand where the technology was going, nor will we in the future, frankly.
We will get it wrong.
Always. Every time.
Pattern recognition.
Steve Jobs said, doesn't matter how good a lock you make, there's always a better lock picker.
Right.
But so for mobile devices, how are you seeing mobile viewing of your content on mobile devices? Is that something you're aware of? You mentioned earlier how the medium is impacting the content.
Well, it's way up outside the United States. I'd say on balance, it's probably a very good thing for us. In certain markets, China is a good example of it, but there are other markets too, where the physical form of DVDs was never going to catch on because the piracy war was lost long, long ago. So all of a sudden, with mobile devices and the ability to make deals with real digital resellers or renters of our content, and a device that people can watch them on, whether it's a tablet or a phone, it doesn't matter, we all of a sudden have a market that wasn't there before. And I think there are lots of markets that can be cited. Most of them are in the BRIC countries where we are finding real sources of revenue as a result of people watching this stuff on mobile devices. More tablets, I would argue, than... I think tablets were really revolutionary in terms of how people are watching stuff unconnected to a cord. Much more so than a smartphone.
What's interesting is and I don't know if this is true in video, but on radio, on iHeartRadio, less than 10% of the users use both the PC and mobile for the service. They are, for us, at least on our product, completely separate markets. And I was stunned. I thought this was, I'm using my PC, then I go out and I use it on my phone. No, it's some people are using their mobile phone sort of as their computing device, and other people are still using a PC. And I'm not sure what the implications of that are, but it was probably one of the most surprising statistics I've seen in the last year or so. And I'm not quite sure what it means and how we take advantage of it. And I'm not sure, by the way, if it happens in video. But for us, it's a very important development because it really says we have to deal with separate products for these markets as opposed to think about it as one group seamlessly using all those devices together.
There's certainly been a lot of talk about sort of the post-PC landscape. To go back to the content question, obviously there are a lot of movies being released in 3D. It's harder to pirate. The focus on international distribution, you have to do really big $200 million budget movie. Is there room for a $50 million sort of mid-market film anymore? Or
oh my God, yes, 100%. The mistake that people make about the mid-market, the middle-range movie being the sort of the DMZ or the no man's land that you don't want to trip into is that what you don't want to do is make a $50 million movie for nobody, meaning you don't know who the audience is. But I can give you countless examples this year, especially. Most of them are with our competitors who've made movies in the $40 to $60 million range that knew who their audiences were and did brilliantly with those movies. So it's not, you can't make a $50 million movie that a little bit of it is for young women and a little bit of it is for older men and a little bit of it is for this and a little bit of that. If you make a $50 million movie that is for older men, let's say The Expendables, for argument's sake, you clean up. I'm not saying it was 50, it was probably less than that, but it was, that kind of a movie is a great movie to make.
Gale, where do you see the future of the movie business going in terms of budgets? You made The Terminator. You've got to know what the future is.
Yeah. Well, Skynet's active. Maybe we should all worry.
That was prescient.
I think people are going to continue to go to the movies. It's a shared experience. People, as Bob was saying, people are away from their homes more. So I think the fear that people had that people would stop going is not really a legitimate fear. I think that the fact that so many films from Life of Pi, who would have thought that movie would make over $100 million? There's actually a greater range of films that might surprise you that can do well. And of course, tentpoles are essential, and tentpoles working are essential because you spend so much money on them. But the fact that we have so many options and that the foreign films are now coming to the U.S. market as well as the U.S. films being exported, is another remarkable story. But I do think that the loss of the small independent distributor, that I think is being replaced by VOD and even four-walling now.
But I will say one thing. Every time, I agree with you entirely, and every time I see a summer where their theater attendance is down or box office is down, guess what? The movies were bad. And we know that to be the case, and the same thing is true of the Christmas season. And the savior, and I think Les said it well when he talked about the fact that the content producing businesses tend to be, we're nervous people by nature. We wake up in the morning and we're nervous. We're not complacent. And it's a little bit, it took the car business, the automobile business, a long time to wake up and sort of look out their window and see that, gee, that parking lot is filling up with a lot of foreign cars out there. And then finally, a decade or two into it, they said, maybe we should change the way we're making cars. In the movie and television business, the Monday morning that things didn't work, everybody's in their office saying, the sky is falling, we better change the way we're doing business. And they do it constantly. And I think while it doesn't necessarily make for a particularly healthy lifestyle, nor very good sleeping patterns, it definitely means that the industry remains dynamic. The kinds of things that are being made either in television or movies are in many ways more exciting than they've ever been, because people are by nature nervous and want to succeed and are willing to change all the time.
So what's the summer going to look like? Will it be a good summer?
I think for the industry, it's going to be a really good summer. I think it's a scary summer because it's like walking it through the Himalayas, when I see the gigantic movies that are coming in. But from what I gather, many of these movies are not only big brands, but they're also movies that people really want to see.
Why is CBS in the movie business?
I ask myself that often. You know what? We've put our toe in the water. We've been in the business about 3 years now. We've done about 9 movies. A few of them have worked. More than that haven't worked. It's a very interesting business. Look, we're a content provider. That's what our future is. And it's another content business that we want to be in a small way. As of now, we haven't done a movie that's cost more than $35 million. So while we've lost a little bit of money, it's very little. We're getting out of the outdoor business. We're selling our international outdoor group, and we're doing a reach with our domestic group because it's not a content business. So we want to find different ways of being able to provide content. It's another nut to crack. It's a very tough business. There's a reason that a lot of people aren't in it, but hopefully we will succeed.
Bob, I want to ask you the final question, since you have a perspective across so many different industries and disruptive technologies like cable with MTV and AOL. What the
hell happened? I used to be a disruptor. Now people are disrupting me. That's fair.
What is the next technology that you think is going to be so disruptive? We've seen the rise of mobile. We've seen social. What's the next big thing?
I have no clue. I think that, and by the way, anyone who says they do is kidding themselves or kidding us. If you look at all the stuff that's come up, it has been so quick, so sudden, so unexpected. Whether it's social, which wasn't even around, a few years ago, and was there in a seed of chat rooms on AOL or GeoCities or Friendster, but to hit these kind of levels of really replacing the normal circuit of word of mouth conversation. It wasn't around. This popped up. I think mobile has surprised everybody how quickly it's come up. Subscription services. We tried one at AOL years ago with Rhapsody. Didn't have the bandwidth. It was really, you needed the bandwidth before a Spot. Who can enable a Spotify? It solves some of the problems. So I think these things are unknowable. And I think the best thing you can do for the future is, instead of trying to figure out the future, you're better off being prepared for the future and ready to act as soon as it shows signs of what it is.
Do you think we'll see more consolidation? Are we about to see a bunch more M&A activity?
Well, you know what? We always go through a series. Again, I'm so old that it consolidates and it unconsolidates, and it consolidates, unconsolidates. So I think we'll see both.
Any final thoughts before we wrap this up? Any M&A activity in your future, Michael?
None that I can see or hope for.
I think that's a good note to end on. I want to thank the panelists so much. A great lineup, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.